Hey, what's going on everybody? Low Invest here, back again with another trade recap video. This video I'm going to be recapping my NASDAQ long position from Monday, July 21st, close to that New York Open. And the reason why I feel like this is a very important trade recap for all of you is I utilize the hour profiling in order to determine an entry on the 3-minute and the 5-minute by utilizing concepts like change in state of delivery, higher time frame sweeps, session sweeps, and breaker blocks, as well as SMT. So for those of you interested, feel free to stay tuned during the duration of this video, and let's get into it right away. So first of all, what did I notice about NASDAQ on the hourly time frame that had potentially given me some long bias, or potentially had set up my long bias prior to my New York Open? Well, here on my chart on the hourly time frame, I already do have my London high, my London low, and my Asia lows mapped out just to keep the explanation as simple as possible for every single one of you. And getting into it here, what did we see about this hour profile that made me interested in a short-term retracement prior to seeing a New York continuation higher? Well, when we look at the start from this 12 o'clock candle on Friday up until Sunday and Monday, what did we see happen exactly? Well, we had a small Sunday gap up, which ended up having a bearish move down, followed by a continued bullish move higher. And if we just look up at these highs here, what exactly do we see up around these highs? Well, we see an area of supply or higher resistance where market was consistently rejecting off of with every move. So we had 1, 2, 3 rejections. And then as we approached our London session and our Asia session, what did we see happen? Well, we had a bullish continuation, a retrace during this Asia session, and then a London manipulation and continuation higher into this supply, aka this heavy resistance zone, up at around 23,305. And so when I was looking at market here, what exactly did I want to see? Well, NASDAQ was approaching these all-time highs, as we can see on my chart, being around 23,309. And so what did I want to see? Well, rejecting off of all-time highs is a great way to potentially find a short-term short setup prior to an expansion higher. And so what did I want to see? As we saw previously around the supply, well, we saw a rejection back into this range of 23,169 prior to an expansion again. And then here we are at this London session where I wanted to see a sweep of these London lows and these Asia lows prior to seeing an expansion higher. Due to this hour profiling, if I really wanted to break this down in the best possible way for this trade, what I wanted to see was to see the session sweeps of the London low and the Asia low, and then find some type of reversal signature by utilizing SMT and a change in state of delivery on an aligning time frame like the 3-minute with the 30 or the 5-minute with the hourly, to then look for a long signature back into these all-time highs. As we can tell with NASDAQ here, with these rejections, NASDAQ clearly wanted to retest these all-time highs and potentially create an all-time high going into this new week Monday session. And so where do we see my short time frame, my smaller time frame entry for this trade? Well, we'll quickly look at the hourly timeframes to see whether or not we actually had my bearish short-term bias occur with these London and Asia sweeps. And if I just play these candlesticks out, what exactly do we see happen near the end of this London session, obviously, and the pre-New York session? Well, this 7 o'clock and this 8 o'clock candle, we saw an aggressive hourly sweep of these London lows as well as these Asia lows. And after I saw a double session sweep being London and Asia, I now wanted to see if I could find some type of an SMT divergence between NASDAQ and ES at these Asia lows prior to then utilizing a change in state of delivery or a potential breaker block in correlation with a fractal, aka the change in state of delivery, to look into a long signature back into these London highs. So let's see what happens on the next hourly time frame here. Well, after we rejected off of the Asia lows, we had the 9 to 10 o'clock candle where New York ended up having an expansion and absolutely smashed through these all-time highs. But before we get to those all-time highs now, let's look at how I actually managed to find this long signature on the smaller time frame on NASDAQ here. And it's going to go on the 3-minute time frame here. So once again, what did we see happen? And here we have our Asia and our London session with our Asia low formulated at 11:48, and then our London low that was formed at around this 2 o'clock open. And what do we see happen up here near the supply and these London highs? Well, we rejected, created a continued bearish leg lower, and into this 8 o'clock pre-9 o'clock candle, we saw a very aggressive bearish move that swept out both these London and these Asia lows. And so now what I wanted to look for was to see whether or not I could find some type of an SMT divergence form at the lows between NASDAQ and ES here prior to then looking for a long signature back into these London lows and potentially even tap into these London highs. So I'm going to open up ES's chart here on the right just so you guys can see the correlation with the trades that I had taken. And here we see, if I just zoom into ES here, I know this is kind of giving away the trade setup, but what do we notice happened with NAS and ES? Well, here we go. We'll just play this out just a little bit more on NAS just to let you guys see a little bit as to what I was watching for on this trade setup. And here we see, that's pre-9:30 open. Well, what do we see occur between NASDAQ and ES on the 5-minute time frame? Here we see NAS had formed a low at this 9 o'clock candlestick, whereas ES had formed a low at this 9 o'clock candlestick and then formed an equal low at that 9:12 3-minute candle and ended up rejecting higher, versus NASDAQ formed this 9 o'clock low and swept the 9 o'clock low off of this 9:12 candle, which now becomes an SMT divergence between NAS and ES. So here we'll mark this out in a blue line and we'll make it a double thickness to make it easy to view that this is not a trend line and is more so this SMT. And the reason why this is SMT, for those of you that are new to the concept, is because one asset ended up sweeping the low that was formed at 9 o'clock while the other created equal lows. So there was no manipulation of that 9 o'clock low on ES, whereas NASDAQ manipulated the low of 9 o'clock prior to a bullish signature higher. So this was my first layer of confluence because we had swept out of these London and Asia lows. Now what I wanted to see was this SMT and then a change in state of delivery form on the asset that I wanted to trade. And so in this example here, what did NASDAQ do? Well, NASDAQ manipulated the 9 o'clock low with this 9:12 low here, forming this SMT. And then what do we see here? Well, it formed a brand new low at 9:12 because if we just look at this candle, if we just look and we draw this out, if this low, we extend that out, we see that we created a new low where that previous low was 9 o'clock and the new low was 9:03. And then we formed a new low that swept out the previous lows at that 9:12 versus ES here ended up just consolidating and accumulating here, then created exactly equal lows where it had tapped into the same price level as before, being this 6,339.75, but did not manipulate and fill any liquidity at these lows, whereas NASDAQ did. So this was my first layer of confluence that really gave me some type of confidence when looking for long positions. And as the fractal states, when we are utilizing a change in state of delivery, what exactly is a change in state of delivery? Well, it is a sweep of a previous low or a previous high, and the undisrupted move that causes a sweep that becomes the change in state of delivery. And so if we now look at NASDAQ here, well, we have this SMT at the lows, and then what happens on NASDAQ's chart that creates a change in state of delivery? Well, we formed this new low here, but this new low had a 2-candle undisrupted bearish move that swept out the 9 o'clock low. And so the top of this bearish candlestick, the first one in the move, now becomes our change in state of delivery, which I'll mark out here with our template as our CISD, change in state of delivery. So now, when we utilize change in state of delivery reversal signatures, what do we want to really take into account? Well, change in state of deliveries are very good tactics to find reversal signatures on indices or just general futures. In most stocks as well, it's just a very good layer of confluence to help you find those reversals. And so what I wanted to see now was to see a candle body closure above this change in state of delivery. And what do I mean by a candle body closure? Well, if we just look at a generic candlestick, a candlestick is made up of 2 portions. We have the candle wick and the candle body. And so when I look for a candle body closure, I do not want to see a wick above a change in state of delivery. I want to see the actual candle body close above. And because we are looking for a bullish reversal signature outside of this bearish trend, I want to see a bullish candle body, aka green candle body, close above this change in state. And so at the end of a 3-minute candle, since we are on the 3-minute time frame, I do want to see this closure occur above the change in state of delivery. So let's play out now and see what happens with market exactly. Well, we form a new 3-minute candle, which has a very aggressive bullish closure above this change in state of delivery. And so now, as I mentioned, we have a bullish closure above our bullish change in state of delivery, which is now signaling a market structure shift, aka a reversal signature on NASDAQ on the 3-minute time frame. So now, once I see a closure above this change in state of delivery, as well as found an SMT at the lows between a correlating asset, and in this example, the correlating asset was ES, I now have my entry signature into these long positions on NQ. So I will put my buy order in here, and to be exact, I was in this with 3 minis, and I have now entered the position with this buy order. So when we look at the change in state or the fractal model, you enter at the closure, and your stop goes to the candle body low of the change in state of delivery. There are some conflicting views where some people will use the candle body low as well as the candle wick low, but if I see a very aggressive bullish candle closure like this one, typically I just use the candle body just to keep my stops a little tighter and I'm not risking as much. And so in this trade, I was risking 11 points. Versus I would have been 15.5 if I'd used the candle wick low. And as you guys know too, with the fractal model or a general change in state, with my model, I like to shoot for a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio. So we'll extend this one out until we reach our 2R on this trade. But what did I mention as well that was something I was very interested in for this trade? Well, we had these London lows and these Asia lows, but we also had these London highs that had not been tapped in. And so for this trade, my stop loss goes to the low of this change in state of delivery, risking $705 for the chance to make $13.95. I don't have that set to the exact 2R, so let me actually just get that set exactly to 2R. So that would be $14.10, which makes this trade a 2R trade, right? And so when you were looking at this position, if you want to follow the traditional 2-to-1 risk to reward, I want price to reach into and above these Asia lows, tap me out of my 2R. But because I was in this position with more than one contract, this is where I utilize scaling and scaling out of a position in order to maximize the profit potential on a trade. Because of these London lows and these Asia lows, where was my nearest draw on liquidity as we approach this 9:30 New York Open here, which I'll actually mark out with the V. Here we go. This 930 candle here is the equities open, which is typically a very aggressive move. Well, I wanted to scale one contract out at the 2R, 1 or 2 contracts, and leave my final runner to potentially reach these London highs. And so we'll do exactly that, where we'll see if this 2R plays out and then see if that final contract actually plays out to those London highs. And so let's let this replay tool now do its magic as we watch this trade play. And here we see, we retest, we pull back a little bit, retrace into the previous 3-minute candle. And then as we get close, we get a bullish closure back above, signaling a continuation signature and up 390. And then on the following candlestick, we get another retrace into the previous 3-minute EQ and a bullish closure. And then we can just keep playing this out until we see that our 2R gets taken out right at that 9:30 open. And so here was when I had exited 2 of my mini contracts at this 2R profit. And because this 9:30 open actually had such an aggressive bullish open, the slippage ended up working in my favor, and the 2 of my 3 minis got taken out at a 2.34R on this trade. And then I left my runner to tap out at these London highs here, which we see finally played out. And so if we look at the RR on this trade, this became a 5.89R trade into this New York Open. And a lot of you might be asking, well, New York Open, that's a very sketchy time to take a trade because New York Open, when equities open, can be a very aggressive open. That's when all market makers, price action steps up, price gets very aggressive, especially for the first 30 minutes of market open. And so how did I know that just as well as this went up, did I know that I wasn't going to get stopped out of this trade? Well, pre-New York Open, when I'd gotten taken out at this 2R, as we approached this New York Open, I moved my stop loss to break even, so I was now in a risk-free trade. And even though this does put me at a greater risk of getting stopped out at break even, it's best to preserve your capital instead of take a trade and risk the same amount as your entry, especially because I was getting the bullish continuation signatures from these candlesticks that I wanted. And so once we had tapped out those London lows, which gave me a 2R for my first 2 contracts, I sold at a 2R and then left my runner into these London highs. And in total, this left me with about $1,300 on the day on all of my funded accounts and just a little under $1,100 on my personal account. So just to quickly recap this trade and why I took it. Well, once again, we saw the sweep of the London and the Asia lows, a very aggressive bearish sweep. Now I wanted to see a reversal signature in order to potentially retrace into these all-time highs. And so with this bearish leg here, we saw an SMT form between NASDAQ and ES, which created that displacement. And so now I wanted to see price have some type of reversal signature close and give me a confirmation, which in this case was this 3-minute change in state of delivery. And I entered on the bullish candle body closure, aka the green candle body, not the wick, closed above the change in state, which signaled my entry signature. And I was, only about less than $100 in drawdown here, and then we got an expansion higher into my 2R, which eventually turned into these London highs for a nearly 6R profit on my runner contract. So all around, this was a very solid setup, one that I would take 100% of the time, as we had utilized the higher time frame profiling with that 1 hour continuation, that retracement and continuation into these all-time highs, as well as utilizing the session sweeps for a higher probability reversal signature trade. But anyways, that's going to conclude the video for today. If you did enjoy these type of videos, feel free to like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I will catch you all in the very next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.